Welcome to the New Planner Podcast, where it's all about helping you successfully enter the financial planning profession and accelerate your financial planning career. This podcast will help you understand the profession, become familiar with the various career paths available to you, and avoid the mistakes that limit your success. Join your host, Caleb Brown, to explore the human side of creating a successful planning career through interviews, personal experience, and insights from the trenches. Let's get started.
Welcome to the 272nd episode of the New Planner Podcast. This is Caleb Brown, your host. My guest today is Landon Warmund, who is a financial planner for Reliant Financial Services. Landon joins the show today to share how he transitioned into the business. Landon shares how his father was a financial planner, but he wanted to carve his own path. He remembers being interested in money and financial concepts early on, and even went to a college that had a financial planning program, even though he didn't realize it at the time. He shares how he switched majors and then ended up joining his father's firm, building his own book, and the struggles and challenges he faced his first few years in the profession. Stay tuned to the end to hear about his unique niche, how he was able to scale working with those specific clients, and his plans going forward. I hope you enjoy this episode with Landon Warmund. Hi, Landon. Welcome to the New Planner Podcast.
Hey, Caleb. Thanks for having me.
Hey, thank you for making time for us and coming on the show. Super excited to talk with you. Really cool story. We've gotten to know each other just from, I think, the next gen leadership stuff and just FPA connections and so on. So good to finally have some time with you. Just start off, like, how did financial planning become a option for you for a career? Let's start there.
Yeah, absolutely. So probably me coming into the industry and really being interested in financial planning, it started at a pretty early age. So I kind of had the nice fortunate thing with our family where my father is also a financial advisor. And he does a great job of making sure that, when I was going through the process of deciding, what my future career was going to be, he didn't want to voice his opinions, but he also wanted to make sure that I have access to resources so that I could explore within finance. So like growing up, I was always interested in money. I remember at a young age, I would bring my sister into my room and ask her what she wanted to buy of my belongings so I could save more money. And so I was always just really intrigued with money. When I was in, I think, high school, I asked my dad to open me up my first stock account. So kind of through this whole process, it was just naturally that I was just kind of gravitating really towards just finance and money. And then, when we started doing the college visit process, I looked at two schools, Kansas State University and UMKC locally. And, I went on K-State's campus. And at the time, I had no clue that they had a personal financial planning program. My father didn't know either. And so I ended up going with K-State and was going for a degree in just general finance. And as I was going through that process, I made it very clear to my academic advisor that, I wanted to get my degree in finance and that I eventually wanted to sit for my CFP exam. And they just kind of shook their head and said, okay. And by the end of my freshman year, they said, oh, hey, by the way, there's this degree. It's across the street over in the Human Ecology building. And it's actually for personal financial planning. It'll allow you to be eligible to sit for your CFP exam. And so then I immediately went across the road and went into the Human Ecology building. And I don't know if you know Ann Coulson, but she was kind of in charge at the time, and met with her. And she pretty much threw out a roadmap of everything that I was going to be doing for the next 3 or so years with the financial planning program, and called my parents afterwards and told them I switched my major. And they were extremely shocked because they didn't think I would change my major. But I'm like, no. Listen, this is what I wanted to do in the first place. We just didn't know it existed. So that was kind of the start of me getting into the industry. Graduated December of 2018, sat for the CFP exam shortly after that, and kind of where I'm at now. So I'm a independent advisor, and so I've kind of built my own book of business, and I'm about 7 years in now. And we really focus on working with nonprofit and school district employees in the states of Kansas and Missouri.
Wow, that's a cool niche. I want to come back and explore that. But a couple things you said earlier, it didn't sound like you got a lot of pressure from your dad to say, hey, come do what I'm doing. It's great. I want you to take over my business. It didn't sound like that's what happened.
No, absolutely not. And as I was kind of exploring this process, he did a great job of, we would go out to lunch over the summer and we would meet with some of his friends in the industry just so I could see the other aspects of financial planning and kind of explore around to really make sure that being an advisor was the exact thing that I wanted to be. So, I think he allowed me to meet with, some wholesalers, some people on the
Hmm.
insurance side, really just trying to get me like a good idea of what the whole industry looked like. But really, no, I mean, I think if you ask him, he would have said, don't be an advisor. It's tough, especially starting off as kind of self-employed and independent. But it was the
Yeah.
best decision I ever could have made.
Really cool. Really cool. And something you said, I mean, kind of tongue in cheek concern, but like, man, like we got this is you didn't know K-State had the financial planning program. You kind of fell into it like a lot of us did. And like, I wish that would stop becoming sort of the narrative and the norm and be, kind of an outlier, right? And I don't know what we've got to do. I know it was in a different program and, maybe you hadn't made the decision then to do financial planning, but I just hear this so often. Hey, I showed up, didn't even know it was an option. And it's like one of the best programs out there.
Yeah, I wish it was a little bit different, but every single time I go
Yeah.
back and speak with students, I always say, by a show of hands, if this was your first degree that you decided to major in, raise your hand. It is shocking how few hands actually go
Oh,
up. There's very few
I
people
know.
that find financial planning right when they're starting to get into school their freshman year.
Okay. And so just to come back to your story, your role I mean, you didn't join your dad and like help him with his business. You had to get your own clients and sort of no salary and build your book. Is that kind of the direction you went?
Yeah. So technically right now I'm still completely 1099. So my clients are really what I'm responsible for and that's it. So at our company,
Okay.
we're all, we are all under the same company name, but we're all independent advisors and most of us serve the same demographic of, school district employees and nonprofit employees. So yeah, from day one, I was pretty much in charge of building my own practice and my own book of business.
And I mean that is a scary prospect for a lot of people. Like how did you I mean, how did you arrive at that? And then also, how did you get over maybe any fears you had to get some of these clients to work with you? Because I mean, like coming out of school at 22, it's harder to go to someone and say, look, I have all this life experience and you need to use me because I can walk you through the ups and downs and they're twice your age.
Yeah, I think that's a really big loaded question because there's a lot of things that I'm really passionate about on this one. You won't believe how many times that I would meet with a potential client and they would ask me, is this what your dad does? And it got to the
Wow.
point where I would come back and say, actually, no, my father and I, we have very different investment philosophies. And here's why both of them are okay. And it allowed me
Okay.
the opportunity to really establish myself and my independence there. But the thing was when you're having those first conversations, you're not going to be good at it. And that's perfectly
Yeah.
fine. These financial planning programs that students are going through today, they provide you with so much knowledge and so much expertise that a lot of older advisors that don't have their CFP designation, they don't have that even with years and years of experience in the industry. And so when you're a new advisor coming into this industry, you need to make sure that you understand that you have a lot of knowledge. The confidence might not be there, and that's okay. It comes with time, and you just have to put in those reps to get there. But that will come with time. It's just about actually going out there, meeting with people, and actually showing them your voice and your character, and just having those conversations.
Love it. I want to come back to, I mean, because what I heard, I mean, you said school district, government, nonprofit. I mean, I'm not hearing billionaires with stock options and like everybody else is going after, right? So how did
Yeah.
you guys arrive at this niche, which I think is great, by the way?
Yeah, this is something that our company has had pretty much since our inception. So, my father and some of the other advisors, one of their biggest clients at the time was one of the teacher unions. And whenever they were transitioning companies and starting our current company now, one thing that they did was they met with the teacher union and told them, hey, just a heads up, here's everything that's happening. And, they will tell the story to this day, but the teacher union said, okay, well, we're going to have a meeting. We'll call you back in here in a second. And shortly after that, they called him back in and said, okay, well, what's your company name? We would like to continue to work with you. And so that was kind of the start of the company as it is now, and continuing to focus on working with school district employees on that side of things. And it's really K through 12 for the most part. But ever since the inception, it was really school district employee focused between Kansas and Missouri.
And not, I mean, and not just teachers, right? I mean, everybody that works in the administration and all the other stuff.
Yeah. I think one of the biggest things that I'm very strong in opinion about, and I know a lot of people in our industry would probably disagree with this. I always say that regardless of your net worth, your income, how many assets that you have, I think you're entitled to some level of service when it comes to financial planning, even if that's a 30-minute conversation on an annual basis. And so oftentimes when we're working with clients, it might be their first time that they're ever speaking with an advisor. And a 30-minute conversation to help them get a retirement plan in place and actually answer just some of those very minor questions to get them started in their career is invaluable to them. And so even though these aren't clients that might have a tremendous amount of financial assets, at least not immediately, I think it's our duty and obligation to make sure that they're being looked out for, and making sure that they're actually meeting with a competent advisor that has a tremendous level of experience in this, where they're getting some good advice.
And then how do you get these people as clients? How do you get introduced? You just visit the schools and the government buildings and events, or what are you doing on the business development side?
Yeah, so the K through 12 marketplace, when it comes to serving them, it's very interesting. So there are multi-provider plans, and then there's single provider plans with their 403B and 457. So for some of the school districts we work with, we are the single provider, and some districts that we work with, we're a multi-provider. And so depending on what that structure looks like, each district will have different rules and kind of things that you have to stick to in terms of working with their district. Most of them are pretty open to us coming in, being able to provide that education. And a lot of it is doing kind of webinars or in-person events where we're going over typically the biggest things that we have questions about, which is, the pension system, understanding your retirement savings options, and student loan forgiveness. So that's a lot of the education that we're typically providing when it comes to finding new clients.
And I mean, I got to ask, because ever since COVID, our phone's been ringing off the hook, and for career changers and people trying to find jobs, that's our recruiting business. A lot of them are teachers. They're bailing on teaching. Yeah. I mean, is that part of your service to sort of help them find other career options?
Yeah. So typically each year we probably have a handful of clients that are exploring other career opportunities. Yeah. And so normally when we have those conversations, it's about, okay, well, to the pension system and what guaranteed income you would be giving up to go private sector. And of course, like going to the private sector, it's not a bad thing. And, at the end of the day, not every decision that we make has to be a smart financial decision, especially if that brings, happiness and joy to your life that you're not receiving in the classroom. Because, like a lot of people say, is teaching is not the same as it was before COVID. It's just completely different. And people are not staying in the classrooms as long as they used to. And so a lot of times those conversations are really structured about, fulfillment, happiness, making sure that they're getting what they want to out of their workday, but also a little bit of the financial side, of course, because that's typically what we help them with, and helping them just kind of navigate that option and figure that out.
How is the experience of your career the last 7 years differ than when you were a student, sort of bright-eyed sitting there at Kansas State, like, man, I'm envisioning this is what it's going to look like. And then now that you're in it, was there any big deviations?
I would say probably getting started. I didn't think it was going to be as hard as it actually was. I know a lot of people, going through school, I listened to, I think, some of the big podcasts that I listened to was Hannah Moore's podcast, Kit's podcast, Brad Johnson out of Topeka had a good podcast at the time. So, I would listen to them, and, the big number that you heard was, 3 years. If you can make it in this industry and build a practice for 3 years, typically you're in a good spot after that. Honestly, 4 to 5 years is what it took for me to actually start feeling a lot more comfortable. And maybe that had to deal with a little bit of kind of where we were in, the country with kind of coming through COVID and inflation and all of that. But I don't think I expected it to be as difficult first getting started, but maybe that's why we see kind of a little bit of a drop off with people staying in this industry, kind of in that 4 to 5 year mark.
Well, admittedly, that's a tough time to start any business during coronavirus. Yeah. I mean, like, come on, but so you stuck it out. Now that you're already starting, you've made, like, what's been the biggest challenge? Has it been getting the clients? Has it been getting the clients to do what you want them to? Has it been something completely different?
Yeah. So, up until now, I've wore pretty much all of the hats in the company. So, or for myself, personally. I mean, I'm the marketing cap, I'm the new business cap, the client service associate cap. So all these different things. At this point right now, what I'm really struggling with is trying to get back to doing the things that really bring me the most happiness, and that's meeting with clients and actually doing presentations and being in front of large audiences. Those are my favorite things. And so heading into next year, one of my big goals is to actually hire a client service associate. So we're in the process of that. But I always tell people, if I could get to the point where I'm not living in my DocuSign account and processing paperwork, it's going to be a really, really good day, because I'm ready to kind of get back to, the main reasons that I was really passionate about getting into this profession. But that's where I'm kind of stuck as of right now, is making that next step to kind of scale things a little bit larger.
And I told you this at the events, but I've heard you give a couple talks, and I'm glad you are good at that. I mean, you should be giving presentations, so I'm glad that you're in tune to sort of what's going on. But that's every entrepreneur's problem, right? I mean, like you get away from what you're good at or what you enjoy because you got all this other stuff going on. I alluded to some of the FPA meetings, and I think it was a CFP Board Connections conference where we connected as well. But here you are, a young guy building your own business. You got nobody supporting you. I mean, you're kind of you're having to build this. Why get involved and spend all this time with FPA and do all this stuff, which other people could say, hey, that's taken away, Landon. Why are you doing that?
Yeah, I think, it's really easy for me to kind of gravitate into FPA, mainly just because, one of the reasons why I got into this industry, because I have a giving heart. And the reason I work with educators is because they really and truly do need the help. And oftentimes they cannot afford to get that kind of help. And so when I saw that there was all sorts of young advisors and other planners trying to get into this industry, it was an easy medium for me to slip right into, in terms of being able to help people that were just in the spot that I was in, especially since, like, in my first year, I had no idea what I was doing. I was, trying to figure out my client processes, how to actually conduct a simple client meeting. All I really had was FPA. And my first thing that I went to was an Next-Gen gathering. At that time, I think it was in New Orleans back in 2019. I came out of that conference and it was probably the most impactful thing that I've done in my career. So having that kind of impact for me personally, it was an easy decision for me to start to give back to other people, just so that we can continue that ball rolling forward with just giving back to the next people in line.
Amazing. You mentioned that other teachers couldn't, or employees couldn't get, school district employees couldn't get access to people because they may want to afford it. Talk to us about your fee model. How can they afford to work with you?
Yeah. So one thing that I really try to do is to make sure that regardless of kind of where they're at, there's an option for them. So I have 3 different options in what clients can choose from. So there's an AUM model, there is a hourly model, and then there is a flat financial plan model. So for example, the flat financial plan, it would be a 1-year engagement where I'm compensated upfront, just a full flat fee to really build a financial plan. And then past that, they're kind of in charge of more of the implementation side. At that point, they can kind of choose if they would like to move forward with me in any other of the different compensation models, either hourly, AUM, if they have assets that they want help with. And then my hourly model, I would say, is mostly for my clients that I'm advising around student loans. So those people, typically we do 1-hour Zoom sessions where we're going through their whole student loan situation and figuring out kind of what the right options are for them in terms of getting past those student loans. If that's public service loan forgiveness, teacher loan forgiveness, IDR forgiveness, kind of you name it, we're pretty much putting a clear, actionable plan together so they know those next options moving forward. And then you have kind of that traditional AUM model.
Gotcha. And I noticed that you're a CSLP. So can you just tell people who maybe aren't familiar, like what that designation is, what it's all about, how difficult it is, and if they might want to pursue it?
Yeah. So the CSLP, it's the Certified Student Loan. And the first thing that I will say with this is I've had a lot of people that have come up to me and said, I'm looking to get this designation. Kind of, what do you think about it? It seems like it's something that really interests me. If you are not really practicing student loan planning on a weekly basis, it's a very hard thing to keep up with, especially in the environment that we're in with student loans changing pretty much every week or every month. You need to make sure that if you're going to be working at a firm, it is a firm that aligns with people that are also going to have student loan debt and are going to need that help. But the CSLP designation, it's a wonderful designation. It has given me the knowledge that I needed to really start advising clients around student loans. But on the other side of that, when it comes to student loans, there is a lot of different processes and there's a lot of keeping up with the news so that you're up to date with what's going on. And so I'd say the content, like everything else, that's one part of it, but really starting to practice it, that's where you get another level of knowledge. So I would say that CSLP designation, it's a phenomenal designation for anybody that thinks that they're going to be working with, let's say 1 to 3 student loan borrowers on a weekly basis.
Yeah, gotcha. Well, awesome stuff. I mean, this is really cool. I mean, can you maybe just walk us through the process? I mean, it looks like you have a fee model that kind of is flexible for different types of, validator, delegator, do-it-yourselfer type, which is good. And I'm seeing a lot more of that. But maybe like what's the meeting? I mean, how many times do you meet with these people? What's the expectation and process?
Yeah, more around the student loan planning.
Yeah, I mean, we could start there, but even like the AUM client or even the flat financial plan.
Yeah, so with the flat financial plan, and I would have to kind of refer back to my service offering, but I believe it's about 4 to 5 appointments during the year. And it's really about that financial plan creation process. So getting from point A to point B with building out that financial plan, presenting it, and then there is a little time at the end for some implementation and some follow-up calls to kind of help guide them through that process. As of right now, typically our fees are based on just overall complexity, but normally it's averaging out to about $3,200 for that fee. And then for the student loan planning, so typically that's about a rough flat fee of about $450. And then the AUM, depending on if we have a relationship with the school district, it can kind of depend. I really wish it was a little bit more cut and dry, but on the school district side, it can be anywhere from 65 basis points to about 1%.
Awesome. And I mean, just outside of meeting with the clients, because I know a lot of people select that, what's been the most fun part of the job for you?
I would say getting the loans forgiven.
There you go. Okay.
Nothing is better than getting a call from a client on the weekend that says, this is one of the best days of my life. My student loan balance shows 0. I never thought I was going to be able to get past this. I can retire now. Nothing is better than that kind of call.
That is really fulfilling and rewarding. And then, oh man, that's so cool.
Yeah, it's such a blast. It's such fulfilling work, just being able to help them with such a complex topic that within our industries, everybody has their different specialties and things that they're really good at. Most advisors have just a little bit of knowledge around student loans. And oftentimes we get a lot of referrals from other advisors for student loan planning. And it's a pretty common thing. So being able to be one of those, handful of people that is really good at providing this kind of planning, it's a really fun thing to do.
Way to carve out a niche. And also I think go from what I talk, blue ocean, like there's, like I mentioned earlier, financial planners, at least the ones that I know, aren't lined up to deal with school district and government employees. Okay. They're all chasing the big whales.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong. Like I definitely have more clients than the average advisor, but I'm trying to scale my practice in a way where we can continue to help them at least at a minimum level of help where they're still getting some advice and some help with kind of what they need with their financial planning. So I would much rather hire a younger advisor to help my smaller clients rather than turn a client away that really and truly needs good financial help, but they just don't know where to turn to.
I mean, what's your capacity? Like how many people can you realistically work with?
Yeah. So typically and this is something that I'm going to really be working on next year is client segmentation. On the hourly side, when it comes to the student loan borrowers, I'm typically helping about 2 to 3 student loan borrowers a week with the hourly model. Probably my AUM model, it can be a little different, mainly just because sometimes you'll have just like a retirement plan client, or then you'll have like a full financial planning client where you are including a full financial plan and a little bit more help and assistance with that that client. But I would say probably full financial planning clients, I'm probably around 50 or so. And then on the retirement planning side, it's probably about 250, 300 individuals that I'm currently working with. And those are the ones that I'm going back to kind of my mindset of, if we can help them just at least a minimum level and answer those handful of financial questions a year, and not have a formalized financial plan that unfortunately they probably wouldn't be able to pay for in the first place, that's a huge win. And just kind of on that, when I first got into this industry, our CFP board registered programs preach that you need a financial plan. And I would completely agree. But one thing that you find with the people that I'm serving is just because they need a financial plan doesn't mean they can afford a financial plan. So it's about trying to figure out how you can meet them where they're at and at least help them at a minimum level that's at least getting them to that next financial goal.
That's a great goal. Fabulous. Well, we've already shared a lot, and we really appreciate the time and just the advice and the wisdom and just walking through your story. Really cool, interesting story. Anything else? Any final tips or anything you'd like to share before we end out?
Yeah, I would just say if you're a young advisor listening to this or trying to enter into the profession, don't be discouraged about kind of the complexity here. It's a very complex industry, and I went into this industry a very different way than most other advisors are going to be coming into this industry. There's a spot for everybody. You have to stick with it and make sure that you're really building a support system. That's really why I got involved with FPA, is because I needed that support system and wanted to give back and help. So just make sure that you're taking that extra step to do that.
Landon, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Yep. Thanks for having me, Caleb.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the New Planner Podcast. If you're ready to discover the top career paths for financial planners and see which track is best for you, we created a free guide to help you. Grab your copy of the Financial Planner Career Roadmap at newplannerrecruiting.com/roadmap. There, you'll also find more tools and resources all created to help you build a successful financial planning career. Tune back in next week for another episode, and until then, we're here to help you succeed.